Hey guys, how's it going? Heidi back again. Thought I would post a video and talk about truck driving a little bit, just a little bit. Hang on one moment, please. Alright, I'm sitting in a dock in Louisville, Kentucky. The red light indicates they're loading me. Got my cat here. Oh, there's a German Shepherd over there. Anyway, so in light of the fact that the economy has been slowing down, unemployment is on the rise, cost of living is increasing, and on my mind all the time I think about other women who are in the same situation I'm in, also men, but specifically women who are older, in their 40s, 50s, somewhere around that age bracket, where you're an empty nester. Maybe you're doing the nomad thing, whether it's traveling all the time in a vehicle or, living in a vehicle and then working locally somewhere, trying to do the stealth nomad thing. I always think about, how I'm getting along compared to my counterparts who are doing the same thing. So as I've mentioned before, I'm a long-haul truck driver. I've been doing trucking on and off for 25 years. For the past, going on 5 years, I've been on the road, long haul. I usually work 2 to 4 weeks at a time. It just depends on, what I feel like doing. If I'm feeling like I need more personal time, I'll work for a couple weeks and then I'll go back home for 4 or 5 days. I'll stay in my van. I'll work on my van, which I'm still building out. It's getting close to being finished, but not quite. And then if I feel like I want to be more aggressive, I'll just stay out here on the road in the big truck, for 3 or 4 weeks at a time and just keep earning. But yeah, what I think about a lot is the fact that basically the job I have, I haul food, predominantly meat products, canned goods, non-perishable food items. We also haul, beverages. Actually, today I'm at this place, I'm picking up a load of peanut butter. So the whole trailer will be loaded, I think, with like Skippy peanut butter. Probably about 40,000 pounds of peanut butter. But yeah, so because I'm hauling food, that's what I've been doing for the past going on 5 years with this small company that I work for out of Minnesota. Because I'm doing that, it's relatively like economic downturn proof. In other words, if you're hauling food, that's something that people absolutely need. So there have been fluctuations in the number of loads that we've had over this past year with things changing in the economy. Some weeks have been better than others. Like some weeks I'm getting better work, more miles, other weeks less, which means my pay fluctuates from one week to the next. I might have 1 week where, I work 65, 70 hours, and then I might have the next week only work 50 hours. So that's a change in my pay rate from 1 week to the next, based on changes in the economy. A lot of it has to do with the tariffs and the cost of like raw materials that's impacting transportation, generally speaking, and logistics across the board, across the country. So anyway, the reason why I want to talk about this is the fact that on average, now, like I mentioned, I have a lot of years of experience, and on average at the company I'm working for right now, this small company, I'm bringing in about between $75,000 and $80,000 a year gross, which is pretty decent. I know a lot of people, a lot of women my age, maybe they're not earning, at that level, and it just makes it really hard in this economy. And so I always want to remind people that trucking is an option. It's not as hard as it used to be. The equipment is much easier these days to drive, with the technological advances, with computers being introduced to trucks. It's made a lot less work, a lot less paperwork for the driver. because we have to record logs. In the old days, we had to do paper logs. So you would, every time you stopped somewhere, you'd have to get out a paper log and mark a line with a ruler and a pen where you were, writing down the name of the town, and you would be surprised how much time it takes doing all that paperwork every day. And these days, we just have electronic logs. This is my electronic log right here. It does all the work for me. All I do is change the status I'm in. So here you can see last night, I drove kind of late last night to get down here because I left the house and I wanted to leave late and drive. I wanted to drive through Cincinnati, Louisville at night when there was no traffic. Then I stopped and I slept for about 7 hours, and then I came over here to the dock and I'm getting loaded. So I went from off duty at home, drive line right here, and then I slept for 7 hours, and then here I am off duty again. So all you have to do really is just touch this button, off duty, click it, hang on a second. Yeah, it'll pop up, and then I can choose. Am I on duty? Am I in the sleeper? Am I driving? Am I doing personal conveyance, which is time you can use that doesn't count against you? But anyway, the point is the computer does all the work for you, so there's a lot less paperwork involved these days. Also, these newer trucks are automatics, which I've talked about before. As you can see, there's no stick shift here anymore, no clutch, so there's no effort for me to drive it. I just steer. I don't have to shift gears going up and down hills and stuff. I just drive. And the way you do that is, this is the shifter. All you do is, right now it's in neutral because I'm parked and I have the truck turned off, I have the brakes set. You just go into drive, go into neutral, set your parking brake, or if you're backing into a dock, you just put it in reverse and you back up. It's that simple. So, like I said, back in the old days, you know, you had to learn how to do a logbook and write all that stuff down and keep track of your hours so that you were legal, you know, and you'd have to do all that math. And at the end of the day, I would spend anywhere from an hour and a half every night doing paperwork, whether it was my paper log, you know, filling out paperwork to send into the company so that I got paid for the loads, you know, that I ran. A lot of that is done automatically for me now. And as far as like the truck, back in the old days, you had to learn how to shift. And that was a lot of extra work, you know. You're steering all day long and you're constantly shifting and moving your leg, clutching in and out and braking, and it was just a lot of work, a lot of effort. These days it's all been streamlined and simplified. So in my opinion, this equipment's a lot easier to operate these days. There's a lot less paperwork that you have to do, which minimizes how much time you're actually spending working. So, all right. Anyway, let me get on. I made a little notes so that I don't get too distracted when I talk about this. So, the reason why I'm bringing up this up to you guys is because the economy's not great. I know there's plenty of people out there that maybe feel like they need to make a change and they want something that's reliable. And I'm here to tell you, if you were to go into trucking, it's a bit of a challenge in the beginning. The first year and a half, 2 years, it's an adjustment period until you really get acclimated to the lifestyle, you know, driving long hours, working long hours, traveling around the country, dealing with traffic, dealing with weather patterns, you know. Once you get used to that, it gets a lot easier, and then you have that really steady income coming in. So, the benefits of that are, I live in this truck when I'm out here on the road for free. It's got all the modern amenities. I've got my bed back here. I've got 2 beds back here. There's plenty of room for my animals. I have a refrigerator. I have all my clothes with me, blankets. I have heating. I have cooling. I even have an inverter down here. Hang on a minute. This inverter down here with the light on, it's a 110 outlet. There's 2 outlets there, so you can have a microwave in here if you want. You can plug in things into the outlet. You know, there's a hookup back there for a television, which I don't really watch TV, so I don't have one. But it's basically like a micro apartment with everything that you need, with the exception of a bathroom and a shower. But you go to the truck stops every day to get fuel, and they let you have free showers at the truck stops. So basically the benefit is, like I'm saying, of living in the truck is that you're not paying rent, you're not paying utilities. The company takes care of all the expenses. You just drive the truck. You drive the truck, change duty status on your log, send in your bills after you pick up deliver a load. It's that simple. And then you get paid, like I'm saying. I'm about at the middle rate as far as pay scale. I don't make like the highest amount. I don't make the lowest amount. I could make more money based on my experience, but I choose not to do that. I could go work for a larger company that might offer better benefits and better pay. But what I find with these larger companies is that you just don't get the same level of like respect. You don't necessarily get the best equipment. As far as maintenance on the equipment, you have to wait longer because there's more drivers. And the other part of it is you don't have as much like autonomy as far as like choosing where you want to drive, the types of routes you want. So if you're with a big company, you may get a little bit more pay, an extra $10,000 a year or something like that. But the downside, in my opinion, it's not worth it. So I kind of stick right here in the middle. I work for this small company. There's only 100 drivers at our company. All the people that work at the office over there in Minnesota, they all know me personally. They know my face. They even know what my dog and cat look like. They know where I live and kind of how I live. And it's more of like a family environment. And if I say to them, oh, I really don't like driving down south, which I don't. I don't like driving the south because it's really hot in the summertime. They don't send me down there. They're like, that's fine. You can just drive through the Midwest and the North, Great Lakes region. That's basically where I travel. So I feel like with a bigger company, you have less control over your job, maybe better pay and benefits. But with a smaller company, you get that level of respect that's really hard to find these days, and maybe you get a little more decision making over what you're actually doing. All right, so without further ado, let me just talk about a few basic things that I wrote down here. So, training to get into trucking. I'm not super familiar with how much this costs these days. I know when I went and did it 25 years ago, it was $5,000. I was able to apply for a government, I think a Pell Grant. Yeah. And I got part of that paid for, and then the other part was a student loan. And then it just took me, a few years to pay that loan off. Depending on what state you live in, there are grants available. So if you can go into like the human resources, in the area where you live, Job and Family Services, you go in there. If you're planning to change vocations, sometimes they'll have funds available to pay for your training. I know my son-in-law decided to go into trucking a few years ago. He went and applied for a government grant, and it was approved. So he went to the truck driver training school, and the grant that he got paid for the entire thing. So he got to get the training for free, got his Class A CDL, and he got started in trucking. And he didn't really like truck driving. He didn't like being away from the kids. So he only did it for about a year. And then he ended up getting an office job working as a dispatcher at a trucking company. So, and that paid pretty decent. Maybe not as much as the driving, but he was happy with that. So there's a lot of options open to you. If you get into trucking, you don't always have to stay in the truck and be on the road all the time. The reason why I like doing it is because I'm older. I'm trying to save up for retirement. And by living in the truck, it's saving me from having to pay rent and utilities. That's the huge perk for me. I live in this truck. I don't have to pay for any of the expenses. I'm saving all that rent money, the utilities. I don't have any of those expenses. And then when I am home a few days each month, I stay in my van. So the fact that I'm using this truck all the time to live in, it also saves wear and tear on my van, and that's going to increase the longevity of that van that I bought. It's going to make it last me a lot longer because I'm not constantly using it. All right, so let me talk about a few things here. Financing. Yeah, so you should be able to get a loan. Some of these training places will actually set you up on a payment plan. And then some of the really large trucking companies in the United States still do their own in-house training. So in other words, you could just go without any experience or anything, walk into a trucking company and say, hey, I want to enroll in your training program. They will hire you on. They'll do the background check and everything. They'll hire you on, and then they'll put you through their training course. And while you're doing their training course, usually they put you up in a hotel room. So for however long that takes, which is usually, I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks, something like that, you'll just be staying in a hotel room. They will pay for all the expenses, and while you're in training, they will be paying you a weekly rate. It's usually not a lot. The weekly rate is usually like $500-$600 a week, $700 a week, something like that. But once you get through that training course, then they will put you with one of their trainers, and you'll go out on the road. And once you get through that training on the road, with the first, after you get your Class A CDL, and you go out on the road with a trainer, it'll be another like four or 5 weeks. And when you're done with that process, then they'll put you in one of their trucks, and then they'll start paying you the full rate that you actually get to be a truck driver. As far as I know, most of these trucking companies, if you're a brand new driver and you just came out of truck driving school with a brand new Class A CDL, most of these companies will start you somewhere around, I'd say, $55,000 a year, $55,000 to $65,000 a year. That's just starting. Once you have a year of experience and you didn't have any speeding tickets or any accidents, so you have a really great driving record and you've got that experience, you can go get a higher paying job. Some of these trucking companies will pay anywhere between $60,000 a year all the way up to about $115,000 a year. Depends on who you work for. Like Walmart, I know, pays about $115,000 a year on average. A lot of the companies that haul the doubles, they also pay six figures. Some of the larger companies are averaging between 80 and 90,000, and like the smaller company I'm with, it's between 75 and 80. There are smaller companies that pay less than that, but I mean, there's no point of making less than that when you can make more. All right, so on to the next part. So yeah, you're going to get through your Class A CDL training, get your CDL, and then you're going to go, if you didn't train with a company, then at that point you're going to choose a company to go work for. When you first start out, the really nice companies that pay well, that are smaller, they don't tend to hire new drivers. They tend to hire drivers that have a little more experience. So when you first start out, your first job is going to probably be with a larger company. And like I mentioned earlier, the larger companies, in my opinion, you're more of a number. They have thousands of drivers, and they're not going to, it's not going to be very personal. And you will, like I said, when you start out, the pay isn't great. But you can work for one of these larger companies, like I said, for about a year. That's kind of the magic number. Once you have a year of experience, most of the other, like smaller, better companies will hire drivers with like a year experience, 2 years experience, that kind of thing. Then you can make a change. So I think of this as like your first year in truck driving, first year or two. It's kind of like a boot camp. You have to go through this process of training. You got to jump through all these hoops. But once you have the Class A CDL, once you've been driving a truck for a year or so, and you have that experience, then you're through that boot camp process. You've gone through the training. You've spent some time out on the road. You become familiar with what you need to do. You start becoming familiar with the interstate highways and all the different major cities around the country, and it starts getting easier. So it is a process. I'd say the first year or two, in my mind, that's really probably the hardest part. Once you get past that and you have things figured out and you become comfortable with doing the job, then you really start excelling and you start making really good money. And then at that point, you're set. Like I'm saying, a lot of drivers, not just older drivers like me, but even younger drivers, will just live in the truck and then they'll save most of their money. So if you go into a trucking job and now you're not paying any rent, you're not paying any utilities, you don't have any overhead or bills, you can really start saving money and setting money back and putting yourself in a much better financial situation for your future, while at the same time being in a job that pays pretty well compared to most jobs in the blue-collar world. All right, what's next? Job training, first year pay. Like I said, once you get through the first couple years, your pay is going to go up by probably $20,000 a year. Definitely is going to go up by at least $20,000, if not more. I talked about the difference between working for a small trucking company and a big trucking company. like I said, the company I work for is out of Minnesota. It's a small family company. They've been in business since 1945. They just have the one main terminal up there, just south of Minneapolis in the small town. They do a lot of work with the Hormel plants around the country. They have another small outfit down near Dayton, Ohio, which is kind of near where I live. And that's it, you know, and they're really easy to deal with. They're so nice to me. I really love working for them. All right. What else do I want to talk about here? The difference between hauling food, dry goods, flatbed, whatever. Okay, so yeah, there are different options. In my opinion, I've done dry box, which are like textiles, you know, clothing, general commodities that you might see at the retail stores on the shelves that you buy, stuff that's shipped in from overseas. That's mostly dry van. That means it's just an aluminum, metal, wooden trailer loaded with stuff, and it's not temperature controlled. And then you're moving that stuff from point A to point B. Refrigerated is what I'm doing, which actually, I'm picking up peanut butter today. Peanut butter doesn't get refrigerated, but most of the loads that I haul have to be refrigerated because I'm hauling meat, I'm hauling food items, stuff like that. That might be set at a temperature like negative 10 degrees, 28 degrees, 35 degrees, etc. Well, not 35, probably more like 28 degrees. But yeah, the stuff I haul most of the time is refrigerated because it's food items that have to be kept cold. What I really like about hauling the food items that are refrigerated is the fact that because it's a refrigerated trailer, it's running on diesel fuel. Because it costs extra money to haul a trailer that's being powered by diesel fuel to keep it cold, there's more cost involved. So when you go to get loaded somewhere, somebody has to pay for that cost of that fuel to keep that trailer cold. So they want to hurry up and get you loaded because they don't want to pay extra money to have you sitting around for hours. And then when you go to deliver a refrigerated load, same thing. They're like, hurry up, get it unloaded. We don't want to pay extra for the diesel fuel. So in my mind, in my experience, when you're hauling refrigerated trailers, you're able to get loaded and unloaded more quickly and get in and out of places more quickly. You don't want to be hanging around these places for long periods of time because you make the most money when you're driving. When you're sitting around on a dock like I'm doing right now, you don't necessarily get paid. You'll get paid a flat rate if you sit long enough, but when you have downtime like this, you're really losing money. The best time to make money is when you're out driving. That's when you're getting paid a mileage rate, how many miles you drive. That's where most of the money is. Sitting in docks doesn't really pay very well. Most companies, they'll give you a 2-hour window. So basically, you sit in the dock for 2 hours. You don't get paid for that 2 hours because you're just sitting doing nothing. If you get delayed beyond 2 hours, then they start paying you a flat rate after the 2-hour mark. That's pretty universally true with most trucking companies, that you get paid that rate after the 2-hour mark. So like I'm saying, the thing I like about refrigerated loads is you tend to get in and out of the docks faster. And when you're hauling the dry goods, such as clothing and retail store items with a trailer that's not refrigerated, they don't care how long you sit around. You know, it's not costing them any extra money. So when you're hauling stuff like that, in my experience, because I've hauled it in the past, you tend to sit around places longer. And so I don't like that and I avoid it. Some other things you can do in trucking is hauling tankers. You can haul fuel. You can haul food items. You can haul plastics in tankers. Then there's flatbed, where you're hauling like metals or building materials or things like that. But with flatbed and with tanker, there's a lot more work involved. I don't really need to go into that here. I've done tankers, and I've done doubles, and I've done dry vans, non-refrigerated, and then I've done the refrigerated vans. And in my opinion, what I like the most is hauling food items, because there's less opportunity for a layoff because everybody has to eat. So no matter how bad the economy is, we're still going to be delivering food. And the fact that because it's a refrigerated trailer and requires diesel fuel, there's more cost involved, which means they want to get you loaded and unloaded more quickly. So I have less downtime, more time on the road driving, which is more miles, which is more money. That's my choice. All right, moving on to the next thing. Okay, long hours and routes. Okay, so like I said a little while ago, the part about trucking that I think is the hardest to get used to is the long hours. So what we like out here as truck drivers is we want to get as many miles as possible every day. So I'm hoping I get 500 miles every day. 500 miles, 600 miles is good, but that's a lot of hours. That's up to like 11 hours driving in one day. And if I do that for 5-6 days in a row, yeah, it's pretty exhausting. So that's something you have to get used to. Now, you don't have to work that many hours every day. Whatever company you go to work for, they're going to expect you to try to get in at least 400 miles each day. If you're the type of person that, I don't want to work 11 hours a day, then if you only want to work 8, most places they're good with that. As long as you're willing to, try to get in kind of a maximum each week, then they're going to be happy. But that's what the job requires. I'm here to tell you. Like, some drivers only work 5 days a week. Some drivers only work 4 days a week. I like to work 7 days a week, but that's just because I'm trying to save money for retirement. I'm a little bit behind financially in the big scheme of things, so that's what I choose to do. I'm used to working long hours. I don't find it to be a big deal. I'm used to the job because I've been doing it so long. But when you're starting out, that may be a little daunting and a little bit intimidating. So you might want to kind of ease your way into this. And maybe you don't want to work long hours like I do. Maybe you don't want to work 7 days a week. You don't have to. So you basically will have to find a job with a company that best suits what it is that you're trying to do. So if you want to make the really good money, but you don't necessarily want to work a lot of hours, you can probably find a company that, where you can fit that niche, whatever it is that works best for you. All right, so let's see here. What else do I want to talk about? Yeah, another thing to get accustomed to is just kind of the lay of the land, how the country's set up with the interstate systems and the state routes, and just kind of learning, things are relatively universal across the country. Each state has some uniqueness to it as far as how the roads are laid out, how like the farmland's laid out and access roads are laid out. Each state is a little bit different, but the interstate system is pretty universal across the country, and that's something you'll become familiar with. It may seem a little intimidating, like I'm saying, in the first year or two, but once you've traveled the roads for a few months, you'll start seeing that, it's not as, the country's not as diverse as you might think as far as like how the roads are set up. I know like on the East Coast is the older part of the country, so it tends to be more, communities are closer together and the traffic patterns are pretty heavy and busy. But when you get out into the Midwest, into the plains, it's more wide open, so there's less traffic. That's where I travel. That's where I prefer to travel. I like to travel in the middle of the country where it's mostly farmland because there's not a lot of traffic. There's not a lot of big cities, so it makes it easier for me to go from point A to point B, and I don't have to be stuck in big cities during rush hour, and I don't have to be stuck, out on the highway and traffic jams and construction zones and stuff like that. So it depends on where you live, what part of the country you live, what types of routes you're gonna, be driving. And even if you live on the East Coast, you could get with a larger company that travels all the way from the one coast to the other. I don't do that. I live in the middle of the country, and I just travel around the middle of the country. It's kind of boring, but the job is easy and the pay is good. So that's why I like to do that. All right, what else can I talk about here? Perks. Rent utility free. Yeah, I talked about that. Like I'm saying, this truck has everything you need to live. So you can view it as a tiny apartment on wheels where you're not paying for anything. You're not paying rent, you're not paying utilities, you're not paying for fuel, nothing. Just your food. That's it. So it's kind of a free ride, and then you can earn your money and save most of it. And even if you only do this for a few years, it could really get you ahead and get you in a better position so that when you're all ready to retire, you've got a little bit of a nest egg. All right, what else do I want to talk about? Yeah, early retire and work part-time. That's another thing that I think is really interesting. So Like I said, I work long hours. I try to work 7 days a week. I often work 2 or 3 weeks at a time, which seems like a lot. A lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of days in a row. But the good news is, because I work for this small company, if I want to semi-retire in the next few years, I've built a really good rapport with them. They know that I'm a reliable driver. You know, I'm safe. I'm on time. I'm easygoing. I take very good care of the equipment. And if I went to them at age 62 and said, hey guys, you know, this job's great, but I want to take some time off and I only want to work 9 months out of the year, they'd be like, sure, that's fine. And then they would switch me over to where I work 9 months out of the year. So I'd work for 9 months, take 3 months off, turn in my truck, come back 3 months later, get another truck, go back to work. Some companies will do that. Like I'm saying, it's a small outfit. It's a family company. I've built a good relationship with them over the years. And they have other drivers that do that just work part-time, or they'll work long haul for a period of time and then they'll switch over to local. And that's something else too. Like I said, my son-in-law went into truck driving. It wasn't his cup of tea. He didn't like being away from the kids and his wife. And so he just ended up coming out of the truck for the company he worked for and went right into the office and was working as a dispatcher for the longest time. And then he became an assistant manager. So he kind of worked his way up. So there's other opportunities for you there. If you do the truck driving for a while and you get burnt out on it, you can always become a dispatcher. You can become a local driver, which that's something I did for several years as well. I was a local driver, where basically all you do is you go into work in the morning, punch a time clock, grab your truck and your trailer with your loads, you go out, make your deliveries, you come back to the terminal at the end of the day, park the truck, and go home at night. You're home every day. And that actually pays really well also. I think most of the local drivers are making anywhere between $65,000 and $100,000 a year, on average, period. All right, guys, well, I know I've been blathering on forever and a day. Like I said, truck driving, in my opinion, has gotten a lot easier over the years. We have a lot more amenities, too, which is something I didn't even mention. So in my truck, I have Sirius Radio with hundreds of channels to choose from. That's something I never had years ago. We got the electronic log, so there's hardly any paperwork that I have to do. I've got the inverter in here. I have room for a microwave, refrigerator. You can put in a TV. You can have cable if you want. There's a lot of perks. And then there's all these apps, too, on the phones. Apps that will help you find places to eat when you're on the road, where you can park a truck, places where you can stop and get fuel, places to stop and get free showers, which you get free showers every time you put fuel in the truck, which is usually once a day. You get a free shower, so you don't have to pay for that. What are some of the other perks? The GPS. Years ago, we didn't have GPS. I had to use a paper atlas. I literally had to, hang on. Oh my goodness. This is the longest video ever. Nobody's gonna watch it. Oh, I don't have my atlas. I think I put it away. Anyway, years ago, I would have to get out my atlas, set it on the steering wheel, this giant paper atlas, and then I had to flip through and find whatever, state, I was going through and check for like low bridges, and, I had to check for low bridges, weight limits, all kinds of things. And so if I was sitting in Ohio and they gave me a load that I had to take all the way to, like, let's say, South Dakota, I'd have to get out this paper atlas and open it up to the United States and be like, hey, Ohio, all the way over here to South Dakota. What's the quickest way to go? Let me see where the interstate is. Yeah, I would literally have to figure out how am I going to get there, and I have to write it all down on my little notebook. Then I would have to go through and check every state, If I knew that I was going to be getting off the highway, once you get to your destination, a lot of times you have to get off the highway and take some like 2-lane road or state route. Then you have to go look up that individual state and see, are there low bridges? Are there weight limitations? These days, you don't have to do that. You don't have to get out a big atlas and do all that. You just get the GPS and you punch in and it tells you exactly where to go, which route to take. and it'll route you around any kind of problems, such as a low bridge or a weight limitation. So we didn't have all this stuff back in the day. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have internet. We didn't have computers. We didn't have microwaves and inverters with the 110 outlets. We didn't have all this cool fancy stuff. So it's really a lot nicer these days. All right. Well, I think I've blathered on long enough. Yeah. So it is a challenging job. But like I'm saying, it's if you're hauling food like I'm hauling, the food has to move. People have to eat no matter what's happening in the country, what's happening with the economy. You know, people have to eat. So I'm always going to be hauling food, delivering food, which makes me feel like my job's pretty safe. I'm not concerned about being laid off, and I'm not concerned about this company going out of business. Like I said, they've been in business a long time. Excuse me. And they're doing really well. And so yeah, I feel like I have job security. The pay's pretty good. The equipment's really nice. I have a brand new truck, and I actually have a brand new trailer today, actually also. And like I'm saying, I live in the truck. I don't pay rent, utilities, and so I try to save as much money as possible. All right, guys. Well, good luck out there. If you have any questions about this, just let me know, and I'll try to help you out with any questions you have. And safe travels out there, and talk to you later. Bye.